For 4 years, the old man in the corner booth had ordered 2 dinners. Never 1, never 3. 2, every Sunday, at 6:10, in a diner on Route 9, where the neon bluebird in the window had been missing half its wing since before anyone working there was born. So when Ellie Vance set the water glass down and said, "Same as always, Mr. Boyd," she was already writing it on the pad. "Just 1 tonight," he said. Her pen stopped. He didn't look up. He was smoothing the paper napkin flat against the table with the side of his hand, the way a man smooths a bedsheet, over and over, long after it is already smooth. "Just 1, Ellie repeated. "That's right." She stood there a second longer than she should have. Outside, the rain was doing that thin January thing where it can't decide whether to be snow. The diner was almost empty. The radio over the pie case was playing something with too much horn in it. "You want the blue plate?" she asked. "It's clean." For the first time, he looked up. "No," he said. "Not tonight." He ate maybe a third of the meatloaf. He cut it into small pieces first, the whole portion, the way you do for someone else. And then he sat looking at it, like a man reading a language he used to know. When he left, he set his tip on the table, the way he always did. $2, exactly, in coins, stacked. Quarters on the bottom, dimes above. But he forgot his hat. Ellie grabbed it off the hook and went out into the parking lot, and the rain caught her full in the face, and she called his name once. Route 9 was empty in both directions. The man had been walking with a cane. He couldn't have gotten more than 50 yards. He was gone. Before we go any further, if stories about ordinary people and the moments that change their lives mean something to you, subscribe to Written Destiny, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's talk about the second dinner. Ellie Vance was 34 years old and had lived in 11 towns. She could tell you the layout of a U-Haul the way other people can tell you their childhood bedroom. Her mother had been a woman of great plans and short leases, and the sentence Ellie heard most often as a girl was, "We're not staying here long, baby, so don't get attached to the yard." She'd been in Hadley, Ohio, 6 years now, which was a record, and she did not consider it a home so much as a long red light. In a coffee tin on the top shelf of her closet, there was $4,300, saved 40 and 60 at a time, over 2 years, and in 6 weeks, she was going to take it to Charlotte, where a woman she'd waited tables with had a spare room and a line on a job at a hotel restaurant where the tips came from people on expense accounts. She had told exactly 2 people. One of them was Hank Doyle, who owned the Bluebird and had run it for 19 years without ever once fixing the sign. The other was nobody. She'd told nobody else. That was the point of leaving. You don't announce it. You just stop being somewhere. So it says something about Walter Boyd that she couldn't stop thinking about a plate of meatloaf. Here is what the Bluebird knew about the old man. He came Sundays. He sat in the corner booth by the window, the one with the cracked vinyl patched in electrical tape. He asked for the blue plate, an old chip china one that had been in the back of the cupboard since before Hank's time, heavy, bone blue, with a hairline crack running under the glaze like a river on a map. Hank had tried to throw it out twice. Walter always asked for it. Hank stopped trying. He ordered the meatloaf, and he ordered a second dinner to go, always something soft. Chicken and dumplings, pot roast, never anything with a crust, never anything that needed cutting. He paid in bills that had been folded and refolded into a shape like a small envelope. He tipped $2 in coins. He wore a wedding ring. That last part is why everyone at the Bluebird thought they already knew his story. A widower, ordering for 2. It's an easy story. It's a story people like, because it cost them nothing to feel it. Marla, who worked the early shift, called him the anniversary man. One of the cooks said his wife had died at the table and he'd been ordering her dinner ever since, which was not true and never had been, but it got repeated the way things do in a small kitchen. And in 4 years, not one person had ever asked him. The next Sunday, Ellie put the hat on the table before he could sit down. "You left this." Walter Boyd looked at it. He had a long, careful face, and hands that had been broken and healed in a few places, and he wore a wool coat that had been very good once, maybe 30 years ago. That was kind of you, he said. I looked for it all week. You could have called. I could have, he agreed, and sat, and did not explain why he hadn't. She waited with the pad. 1, he said. Something turned over in her chest. Mr. Boyd. Walter. Walter. She sat down across from him. It was a Sunday in January, in a diner with 3 customers, and nobody was going to say anything about it. Last week you said 1 too. That's right. For 4 years you've said 2. He folded the napkin in half, then in half again. Things change, he said. She should have left it there. She knew how to leave things there. She'd been trained in it since childhood, the way you learn not to memorize a neighbor's name if you're gone by spring. Instead, she heard herself say, "Did she pass?" Walter looked up at her with an expression she couldn't read at all. Not grief, not offense. Something more like a man being handed a coat that isn't his. "No," he said slowly. "No, she's living." And then, quieter, almost to himself, "That's the trouble." He ate a third of the meatloaf again. He asked her to wrap the rest, and she did, and when she brought it back, she saw the paper on the table beside his coffee, a letter, single page, the kind with a logo printed in that soft institutional blue that hospitals and care homes and collection agencies all seem to share. He put his hand over it, not fast, but deliberate. She caught 2 words before he did, Fairlawn Care, and a number, in bold, the way facilities bold a number when they want you to understand that it is not a suggestion. He counted his coins onto the table, quarters on the bottom, dimes above. Only this time there were no quarters, 8 dimes, 4 nickels. He arranged them very neatly, and he set his cup on the corner of the letter so it wouldn't blow when the door opened, and he stood up with the wrapped meatloaf in his coat pocket, and he said, "Thank you, Ellie." He had never used her name before. That was the moment she decided. She followed him the Sunday after. She's not proud of it. She wants that on the record. She took off her apron at 6:40, told Hank she was taking her break, and stood in the doorway of the laundromat, 2 doors down, in the cold, watching a 79-year-old man walk east on Route 9 with a foil package in his pocket. He walked slow. Twice he stopped and stood still, one hand on the cane, the other on a fence post, waiting for something in his chest or his hip to finish. He turned on Cedar. Ellie knew Cedar. He lived at the top of Cedar, above the hardware store. She knew that much because Marla had once dropped off a coat he'd left. He walked past Cedar Street. He walked another 11 minutes, past the closed tire shop, past the church with the marquee that hadn't changed since November, and he turned in at a long, low building with a lit sign out front. Fairlawn Care Center. Ellie stood across the road under a streetlight and watched him go in. Through the window of the day room she could see him, the coat coming off, the slow business of a chair being pulled around, and an old woman in a wheelchair, with a knitted blanket over her knees, and her head tilted like a bird's. He tucked a napkin into her collar. He opened the foil. And Ellie, standing in the road in the cold in her work shoes, 20 feet from a window she had no right to look through, watched an old man feed a woman a third of a meatloaf, one small piece at a time, talking the whole while about something that made the woman laugh at the wrong moments. So she's not dead, Ellie thought. She's here, and he's been carrying her dinner across town every Sunday for 4 years. She thought she had it, the whole story. That was the second time she was wrong, and it wasn't the last. The woman at the Fairlawn front desk was named Denise, and she had the specific patience of someone who has explained the same 3 things 9,000 times. I can't discuss residents. I'm not asking about her health, Ellie said. I'm asking if the man who visits her, Walter Boyd, I'm asking if he's all right. Denise's face changed a fraction. You know Walter? He eats where I work. Denise looked at her a long moment. Then she said in a lower voice, the way people do when they've been sitting on something they think is unjust. Are you family? No. Neither is he. Ellie waited. He's listed as friend, Denise said. 4 years. I've been trying to find that woman a relative. There isn't one. There's him. She tapped the desk twice with a pen. Private pay. Her benefit covers part. He covers the rest. Every month. In person. Since 2011. Since when? 2011. 15 years. Not 4. 15. He's a friend, Ellie said. That's the word on the form. How much is the rest? Denise looked at her a second, then wrote a number on a scrap of paper and turned it around. Ellie had spent 2 years saving $4,300. She looked at that number and did the arithmetic of what it meant to pay it every month, for 15 years, on whatever a man like Walter Boyd had. Rate went up in December, Denise said. Corporate, 11%. She said the word. Corporate. The way you'd say the name of a weather event. He's short now. He's been short since the first. What happens if he stays short? There's a state facility in Ashbourne. She'd be transferred. Denise's jaw tightened. 91 miles. He doesn't drive. Ellie stood in the lobby of the Fairlawn Care Centre and understood, finally, what she'd been watching every Sunday for 4 years. Not a widower ordering for his wife. A man buying the cheapest possible way to sit beside someone. And the second dinner he'd stopped ordering, that $9 a week, that $36 a month, that was a man doing arithmetic he already knew the answer to, and doing it anyway, because that's what you do when you love somebody, and the number won't come out. When? Ellie said. 3 weeks. She started small, which is to say she started stupidly. She put a coffee can on the counter by the register. She cut a piece of card and wrote, "For a neighbor," on it in marker, and she told the Sunday regulars a version of the story, a good version, a moving one, the kind that gets repeated. By the second day, there was $60 in it. By the fourth, 210, and a woman from the church asked if there was a page online she could share. Ellie felt, for about 96 hours, like a person who was fixing something. Walter came in on Sunday at 6:10. He stopped in the middle of the floor. He was looking at the coffee can. He was looking at the marker on the card, and the bills stuffed in the slot, and the woman from the church who had turned around on her stool to look at him, with her hand pressed to her collarbone and her face doing that soft crumpled thing that people's faces do when they've decided in advance to be moved. Ellie watched it land on him, every bit of it. "Walter, is that for her?" he asked. His voice was very quiet and very even. "Or is it for me? It's not charity, it's just, I know what it is." He set his hat back on his head. "I have been a boy that people put coins in a can for. I know exactly what it is. Walter, they're going to move her. I am aware of where they are going to move her." "Then let somebody help you." And the old man said, not angry, which would have been easier, but with a terrible gentleness, the way you'd correct a child who'd broken something valuable without knowing, "I didn't come here to be a story." He walked out. The bell over the door went off, cheerful as anything, the way it did 400 times a day. He didn't come the next Sunday, or the one after. Ellie kept the corner booth empty at 6:10 both times, wiped down twice, the blue plate up front in the cupboard where she could reach it. Hank told her she was being ridiculous, seating-wise, and then said nothing when she did it again. She took the can off the counter and put the money in an envelope in her apron, where it sat like a stone. In her closet, in the coffee tin, $4,300 sat waiting for Charlotte, and for the first time in 2 years, she didn't take it down on payday to add to it, because she couldn't look at it. There are 2 kinds of people who go looking for the truth, the ones who want to be right, and the ones who can't stand not knowing. On the last Sunday before the transfer, Ellie Vance made a meatloaf dinner, wrapped it in foil, took the bus to Fairlawn, and asked at the desk to see Ruth Kessler. "She won't know you," Denise warned. "That's all right." The day room smelled like floor wax and coffee. The woman in the wheelchair by the window had white hair pinned back the old way, with the little bobby pins in a row, and hands that were very still in her lap. "Mrs. Kessler, I brought you dinner." The old woman looked up and smiled, a wide, delighted, entirely unearned smile, the smile of someone greeting a familiar face. "Well, there you are," she said. "It's about time." Ellie sat down. Ruth Kessler ate about half. She talked while she ate, easily, in fragments that didn't connect. about a delivery that hadn't come, about somebody named Dorothy who was late again, about a broken freezer that was going to be the death of her. And then she reached over and put her hand on Ellie's wrist and said, in a completely different voice, clear, businesslike, the voice of a woman running something, 2 plates for the boy in the back, 1 to eat, 1 to take with him. Don't let him see you wrap it. Ellie went very still. 2 plates, Ruth said again, and patted her wrist twice. 1 to eat, 1 to take. Mrs. Kessler, who's the boy in the back? But she was already gone again, off somewhere in 1962, worrying about a freezer. Ellie went back to the Bluebird that night and stood in the dining room after close with the lights half off. On the wall by the coat hooks, there was a photograph. It had been there longer than Hank. It was black and white, in a frame the color of weak tea, and it was so furred with dust that nobody had actually seen it in years. It had become part of the wall, the way a thing does. Ellie took it down. She wiped it with her apron. A woman in her 30s stood in front of a diner in a white apron, one hand up shading her eyes, laughing at whoever was holding the camera. The neon bird in the window behind her had both its wings. Along the bottom, in white ink, in a careful hand, the Bluebird, 1961, R. Kessler, prop. Ellie sat down on the floor with the frame in her lap. Ruth Kessler hadn't been a customer of the Bluebird. Ruth Kessler had been the Bluebird. And somewhere in the back of the cupboard, under the good dishes, there was a heavy bone blue plate with a crack in the glaze that a man had been asking for by name every Sunday for 4 years. The stairs up to Walter Boyd's room were on the side of the hardware store, outside, iron, slick with ice. He opened the door in a cardigan with his reading glasses pushed up. "I'm not giving you the money," Ellie said. "I came to give you this." She held up the photograph. Walter looked at it for a long time. Then he stood back and let her in. It was one room, a bed, a chair, a hot plate, a small table with a sewing kit on it, because he mended his own clothes. On the wall, one shelf with maybe 20 books. No television. She noticed 2 things. The first was a pale rectangle on the wall where something used to hang, and a set of empty brackets in the corner where a toolbox had clearly sat for a long time, and a bare patch on his wrist, under the cuff, where a watch had been. The second was the refrigerator. She opened it because he told her to, and it was almost empty. On the middle shelf, 6 small containers, washed margarine tubs, each with a piece of masking tape on the lid. Mon, Tui, Wed, Thu, Free, Sat. That's what the second dinner had always been. One for Ruth. And the man had been eating his own Sunday dinner in 6 pieces, Monday through Saturday, for 4 years, so that a woman with no children and no memory could have something hot on a plate once a week that didn't come off an institutional steam table. "Sit down," Walter said. "I'll make tea. It's a long thing." He was 9 years old in the winter of 1962. His mother had gone the year before. Not died, gone, which he said was a different kind of missing, and worse in some ways, because you keep expecting a bus. His father was a man who was fine until about 4 in the afternoon. Walter used to wait behind the Bluebird because the kitchen door stayed open when the fryers were on, and heat came out of it, and sometimes so did the bin. "She caught me at that bin," he said. "January. Cold like tonight." He turned the cup around on the table. "I'd got a whole basket of biscuit ends in my coat. She grabbed me by the collar." He smiled a little, and she walked me right through the kitchen, past the cook, and sat me in the back booth like I was the mayor. Put down a plate, never said one word about the biscuits. "The blue plate," Ellie said. "The blue plate." He nodded. She had 4 of them, her mother's. She said the good dishes were for people who needed a good day. He was quiet a moment. Every Sunday after that, 14 months, 1 dinner hot in front of me, and 1 wrapped in wax paper by the register when I left, and she'd say, his voice caught, once, and he waited for it, and went on. She'd say, "Eat the hot one now. The other one's for when nobody's looking after you." Ellie put her hand over her mouth. "She never asked me a single question," Walter said. "Not one. Where's your mother? What's your father? Do you need a social worker? Nothing. 14 months of Sundays, and that woman never once made me explain myself. To eat. He looked up. You have no idea what that is. To be fed by somebody who doesn't need the story first. What happened? My aunt came from Dayton. April of '63. He shrugged with one shoulder. Ruth put $1 in my hand at the bus, and I said I'd pay her back, and she said, and here he did the voice, an old woman's brisk voice, and Ellie recognized it instantly, because she'd heard it 2 days ago with a hand on her wrist. Don't pay me back, pay attention. He set down the cup. I did not pay attention, he said. For 48 years I did not pay attention. I had a wife and a trade and a life, and I did not think about that woman more than twice a year, and I am ashamed of every one of those years. How did you find her? By accident. 2011. A fellow from the union said the old Bluebird woman was at Fairlawn and had been for a while. And did I know her? He looked at the window. She had nobody, Ellie. She never married. She sold the diner in '78 for almost nothing and put it into her sister's medical bills, and her sister died anyway. She had $400 and a state bed, and nobody had come to see her in 6 years. Ellie thought about a photograph so dusty it had become part of a wall. So I started paying, Walter said simply, and I started coming. For 15 years. For 15 years. Walter, she doesn't know who you are. No, he agreed. She hasn't known me since about 2019. Then. Why? And the old man looked at her with genuine confusion, as though she'd asked him why he breathed on Tuesdays. Because I know who she is, he said. They moved Ruth Kessler to Ashbourne on a Tuesday. Ellie did not stop it. She wants that understood too. She didn't stop it. She didn't raise the money. No lawyer called. Nobody at corporate had a change of heart. A woman was loaded into a transport van and driven 91 miles because of a spreadsheet, and that is simply what happened. What Ellie did was smaller than that, and it cost her more. She took the coffee tin down off the shelf, and she bought a 2004 Buick from a man on 4th Street for $1,900, and it had a hole in the muffler and a driver's window that only went down, and she did not call the woman in Charlotte to say she wasn't coming. She just stopped adding to the tin. Hank saw the car in the lot and said, "That's a lot of car for a girl who's leaving in 3 weeks." "I guess it is," Ellie said, and refilled the ketchups. She drove to Cedar Street on Saturday evening and stood at the bottom of the iron stairs and shouted up until Walter came out. "I'm going to Ashbourne tomorrow," she said. "I'm going at 4. If you're on the stairs, I'll stop." "Ellie, you said she never made you explain yourself." Her voice cracked and she let it. "So don't make me explain myself. Just be on the stairs." He stood at the railing a long moment, an old man in a cardigan in the cold, holding onto the rail with both hands like the boat was moving. "I don't know how to be on the other side of this," he said. "No," Ellie said. "I don't imagine she did either." He came into the Bluebird the next day at 6:10. Ellie was at the register. She turned around with the pad already out, and her heart going somewhere up around her ears, and she said the sentence she'd said 400 times, without ever once meaning it this much. "Same as always, Walter?" He took off his hat. "2, he said. She had to look down at the pad for a second. "2, she said. "And the blue plate." He paused. "If it's clean, it's clean." He sat in the corner booth by the window, and when she brought it out, one hot on the bone blue china, one wrapped in foil beside it, she also brought the photograph, dusted, in its weak tea frame, and set it on the table facing him. Walter Boyd looked at a laughing woman in a white apron in front of a neon bird with both its wings, and he put 2 fingers on the glass, very lightly, the way you'd touch someone's face. "There she is," he said. "The drive to Ashbourne takes an hour and 50 minutes in a Buick, with a hole in the muffler." The new place was fine. That's the honest word. Clean, loud, understaffed, and the day room smelled like disinfectant and somebody's microwaved fish, and Ruth Kessler was by a window that faced a parking lot instead of a lawn. Walter took off his coat. He pulled a chair around. He tucked a napkin into her collar and opened the foil, and he began to talk to her about nothing at all, while he cut the food into small pieces. She ate about half. She didn't know him. She called him Arthur once. And then, near the end, Ruth Kessler reached up with one unsteady hand and straightened the old man's collar where it had folded under itself, the way you'd fix a child before school. And she said, briskly, to no one, to everyone, to a room in 1962, "Eat the hot one now." Walter Boyd sat very still with his hands in his lap. "Yes, ma'am," he said. Ellie went and stood in the hallway for a while. They got back to Hadley at 10. The diner was closed, lights half off, Hank long gone. Ellie let herself in to hang the photograph back up, properly this time, straight, at eye level by the register where people would actually have to see it, and she was reaching for the light when she heard something in the storeroom. Micah Reyes was 16. He'd been washing dishes at the Bluebird since October. He came in early on Sundays and stayed late, and never once asked for a ride home. And Ellie had known for at least 2 months, in the way you know a thing you've decided not to look at directly, that his backpack was too full for a school night, and that the storeroom light was on some mornings before Hank arrived. She had told herself it wasn't hers to handle. She was leaving anyway. Don't get attached to the yard. He came out fast, wiping his hands, already talking. I left my phone. Sit down a minute, Ellie said. Ellie, I swear I wasn't. Micah. She turned the light on over the corner booth by the window. Sit down. He sat, braced, 17 excuses deep and none of them out yet. She went into the kitchen. It took her 11 minutes. She came back with 2 dinners. One hot, on a heavy bone blue plate with a hairline crack running under the glaze, like a river on a map. One wrapped in foil, squared off at the corners. She set them both down in front of him. Micah looked at the 2 plates. Then up at her. Why 2? Ellie sat down across from him, in a diner she had been 3 weeks from leaving, under a photograph of a laughing woman in an apron that she had hung back on the wall an hour ago, straight and dusted, where everyone could see it. Eat the hot one now, she said. The other one's for when nobody's looking after you. I don't. He stopped. His jaw did something. Why are you doing this? She thought about a boy behind a kitchen door in January of 1962, with a coat full of biscuit ends. Somebody did it for somebody once, Ellie said. You don't have to explain yourself, just eat. Outside, the broken neon bird flickered over Route 9 with half a wing. Inside, a boy ate a hot dinner at a corner table, and a second one sat wrapped beside his elbow, squared off at the corners, still warm. Nobody in that room was rich. Nobody was rescued. A woman 91 miles away still didn't know her own name most days, and an old man was still going to take a long, slow walk up Cedar Street on Monday morning with a container marked MON. But the second dinner had gone out into the world again. It had taken 64 years to come back around, and it had never once needed anybody's story first. Some stories look broken, only because destiny hasn't written the final page. If this one stayed with you, subscribe to Written Destiny, and tell us in the comments about the person who fed you when you couldn't explain yourself.